All right, welcome back. So bear with me. I am testing out some different lights. We'll see what sticks, what doesn't, but let's talk about Full Moon by Jim Butcher. Once again, welcome back to the channel, everybody. My name is Alex, and I do book reviews here, mostly of fantasy books, and mixed in with some sci-fi. Maybe further down the road, I'll mix in some other things. Who knows? But for right now, this is a review for Book 2 of the Dresden Files, which is Full Moon. So obviously, if you haven't already, like and subscribe to the channel if you enjoy these reviews. More content coming every single week. But let's just get right into this review, shall we? So Full Moon takes place roughly a couple months after the ending of Stormfront. Now, right off the bat, I'm going to say up front that I did enjoy Stormfront more than Full Moon, simply because of... I don't know if I'm just a sucker for the first book in a series, but I was more interested in the story and learning about the characters in book 1 as opposed to book 2. I was kind of the same way with Wheel of Time. I was the same way with Mistborn. That's just how I am this year, I guess. Alright, so back to Full Moon. So this takes place a couple months after the ending of Stormfront, so you are obviously right back with Dresden and some more cop mysteries that he has to solve. So of course Murphy comes back to him and says, hey, you know, there's murders that are happening, probably magic involved, we need you to come help. So obviously, at least for these first couple of books, building the foundation of this series and his character and his relationship with Murphy and the cops, this is probably going to be somewhat of a trend where Murphy and or other police are like, hey, Harry, we need a wizard. There's probably some magic shit going on. We need you to help figure this out. So he starts investigating these crime scenes with Murphy, and people are basically being torn apart. So much like in the first book, where some kind of magic user was killing people, in this book, it's very clear to them that it's werewolves. There are claw marks everywhere. There's lots of blood, lots of gore. This book actually got pretty violent, honestly, just describing the crime scenes when they find bodies, and some of the combat in this, when there's actual werewolves fighting, got pretty hectic and intense, honestly, which I did enjoy a lot. For the overall story, I would say slightly less interesting than Stormfront, simply because it was just about werewolves. I mean, it was pretty honed in and streamlined on that point of this is what we're talking about. Stormfront was more kind of like exploring multiple things. You had demons, you had vampires, you had, you know, mysterious magic going on. No one really knew what was happening. Whereas in this one, it's more of Harry working with the cops to figure out who these werewolves are, who's killing who, and why. Which brings me to some of the more interesting parts of this, where there are actually 4 different kinds of werewolves in this. So you had Hexenwolf, which are basically humans that put on a magical item to become a werewolf. The side effect there majorly for them is that it kind of drives you insane. You get kind of like a bloodlust and almost can't stop doing it, right? So that plays a big role in this book. There are, I believe it's a Loop Garrow is basically like the big bad kind of werewolf, bigger, stronger, faster than all the other ones. These are basically somebody who would be cursed with being a wolf, so they can't control it. Full moon hits, they become a werewolf, they go crazy, and they kill people. So that's obviously one of the more dangerous types that are here. There are also your classic werewolves and lycanthropes, which are basically indistinguishable from a human being, but they have kind of like an urge and rage inside of them as a werewolf, and I believe that was something that's just born with them. So you explore these different types of werewolves in this story, and the entire plot revolves around Harry and the FBI and the cops trying to figure out who's doing these killings, when the next one's going to happen, and how do they stop it, because a lot of people are dying, a lot of full moons are happening, and werewolves seem to be running rampant. So this book, compared to Stormfront, definitely kicks up on the action a lot. This is pretty much action-packed the entire way through. So returning characters from the first book, obviously you have Harry. Susan plays a pretty big role in this. She gets a lot of character development here. She is in a lot more scenes. You kind of see her and Harry's sort of relationship developing throughout this book. She definitely helps him out a lot. and you actually get to know Murphy a lot more. So she is the main cop protagonist from book 1, and she grows a lot in this book as well. She plays a pivotal role in a lot of these scenes that happen. She's trying her best to, you know, stay on the force, investigate these, make sure people stop dying. So her and Harry's back and forth you see a lot in this book, because she's getting pissed that he basically, you know, withheld so much information from her in Stormfront, and she doesn't really trust him now. So whenever he holds anything in this book, she is kind of just like, you know, not trusting him, because he doesn't seem like a trustworthy person, because he's a wizard, so he's dangerous inherently, and he's not being honest with her, and she's a cop. So that's not a good recipe for a friendship there. But they obviously are working through that through this entire book. What I do enjoy, and continue to enjoy from book 1, is that Harry's such a flawed character. Like, yeah, he's a wizard, but he's not this all-powerful, like, wins every fight and gets away without a scar on him, because he kind of up a lot. And he clearly can't use, like, infinite amounts of magic. He tires out. He gets exhausted. He physically gets to a point where he's like, I can't even cast a spell anymore. Like, there's one point in the book where he's just so tired that he tries to shoot a spell, and it's just like like nothing happens. So that's always really fun, because he's just a super funny and likable character to me, and because he's flawed while being powerful, that makes him more interesting. Overall, though, I'd say this book in general, it was fast-paced. It felt very different from book 1, just because book 1 felt like it was a foundational book building towards a greater world. It was introducing magic, demons, vampires, you know, the White Council, all these different things. And then this book was just like, no, this is about werewolves. Like, this is the story that I'm wanting to tell. And it almost felt like a standalone in a way. Like, I feel like you don't even need to read Stormfront to read this book, just because you could jump in. This is kind of like an open and closed story. I don't know if that was intentional, if he didn't plan 23 books or whatever he's planning ahead of time, but it felt very much like a standalone story. Obviously, you would miss some background characterization from book 1 if you didn't read book 1 first, but like, this is very much its own thing. So, I mean, that works for some people. It doesn't work for other people. Again, I like this book a lot, not as much as book 1, but I'm going to go ahead and just say that overall, good book. Go ahead and read it if you haven't already. And I'm going to jump into some spoilers now. So if you have not read the book, I will see you next time. All right, so spoilers. All I really wanted to talk about was I felt like some of this book was, I don't know, it was a little goofy almost in a way, where, again, I did like it a lot, but with all the different werewolf styles that were introduced to this, which I didn't really expect to happen, I felt like that made this book a little bit silly, just because I was picturing it where how, like, Stormfront, he's going up against this wizard that's essentially trying to kill him and summon like, he's killing people, and then he realizes that Harry's after him and he's going to kill him. This book seemed like it was going to be somewhat the same. Like, you start finding dead bodies, you see that it's Marconi's men getting killed, you see that it's a werewolf. Harry knows it's a werewolf. They're trying to figure out what's going on, and the FBI is like, oh, it's probably somebody, like, pretending to be a wolf. So that was kind of weird. But then you find out that there's, like, a street gang that are the Street Wolves, and they're led by this guy that is, I guess, a wolf as well. I think they were lycanthropes, so they're people, but they have, like, wolf powers. So they start coming after Harry, and then he meets Tara, and Tara is clearly from the Never Never. She's some kind of beast, some version of a wolf. I don't remember if they said she was a Lugero or not, but she's powerful and transforms, you know, kind of off and on, and Harry's like, all right, this girl's clearly not human. So you had that, and then you had McFinn, who was a Lugero, who was the most powerful werewolf in this story, like the big uber super badass werewolf. And then you had the Hexenwolves, who for some reason had some kind of magical belts that they could put on to turn into werewolves, and all these wolves are fighting each other, and the FBI is shooting guns, and then they're transforming into werewolves, and they're crazy, and they're trying to kill everybody. And then Marconi has a deal with the FBI, and then he gets backstabbed. Like, all the different werewolves were just, I was expecting more of like, all right, here's the guy, he's turning into a werewolf, he's killing people, we need to stop him. So I appreciate the extra added wolves, but it was also kind of silly to me that there were just so many different variations of it. Overall, though, pretty interesting. But again, like I said, it's a very much a standalone book, so it kind of wraps up Like, they burn all the belts at the end. The Luke Garrow, McFinn is dead. Tara goes off with the Street Wolves, and then that whole other crew of lycanthropes are mostly dead. They kind of died in that like massive firefight at the wherever the warehouse that they were at. But it's obviously setting up for, I guess, like an overarching villain or somebody who's trying to kill Harry, simply because the way that the book ends, he's saying, like, clearly somebody's out to kill me, because, like, who gave the FBI these belts? Who gave, you know, the orders to kill me? Who's trying to, you know, get rid of me, kind of thing. So it'll be interesting to see where that goes, because I want to see who the strings behind the scenes. Is it somebody from the White Council? Is it some kind of warlock, or somebody couldn't even think of right now? So I don't know, but yeah, overall I liked it a lot. Wasn't as good as the first book. I definitely have some issues with it. Again, it felt like more of a standalone. It didn't feel like much of a continuation of a story. It was just like, this week on Dresden Files is kind of what it felt like, and it was just like, all right, open, closed, done. That story's gone. Next week. So we'll see. I don't hate the like monster of the week kind of thing. I thought that's what the series was going to be, but obviously there will be some kind of overarching story that I just haven't gotten to yet. I've heard a lot of people say that this is their least favorite book. It's the weakest book of the series. Having said that, if it is, cool, because I didn't hate it. It was pretty good. I'm going to love the series, I think. So definitely looking forward to Grave Peril after I read the behemoth of the Dragon Rising. The Dragon Rising? No, it's the Shadow Rising. I'm just making up books at this point. So after I read Shadow Rising, I will be back on Dresden Files. But that's going to do it for this one, guys. So until next time, keep reading.